Hey, so are you ready? You want to get into some of these questions that these people asked?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, let's. You guys, I did a video, and Caine even plugged my video a little bit. Oh, by the way, Caine, I'm gonna put your a link to your channel on my on this video, so people can jump over to you and see your videos. But so you guys have obviously asked a bunch of questions. I picked what I thought would be the most relevant questions, and me and Caine are basically gonna just talk about them. So the first one here, Wow Dominic asks, he goes, "What would be better stacking?" And he says, "Would you stack for dodge, health, or parry? Dodge and health, or parry?" Now I think that kind of means like, what stat would you prefer? I'm gonna kind of say like, would you stack dodge or health or avoidance in Ice Crown, obviously. So why don't you go ahead and bounce up, take that one away, Caine, and I'll piggyback on you.
Off the top of my head, pretty much anything past getting your defense cap, your two primary stats you want to grab aiming for Ice Crown now is armor and stamina. You generally do not want to gem or enchant for parry, block, dodge, or any of the threat stats. Survivability is much more important, and for the most part, dodge and parry are not as good as what health and armor can provide for you for your effective health.
Right, and it's a big debate, and I think it's really just a big debate amongst people who haven't really had the experience to tank a lot of Ice Crown raids. But health and armor really do win out over avoidance. I mean, the only fight that avoidance really does kind of hold its place is on that I found was heroic Deathbringer Sourfang. But that's the only reason is because every time he lands a hit on the tank, anyone with the Mark of the Fallen Champion takes additional damage. So if you got 4 or 5 marks out and you avoid a swing as opposed to taking a hit, everyone in the raid is going to notice a significant damage reduction as opposed to, you having a little bit more health. So that's the only fight where it might be subjective, but I mean, I've done it in both cases with both armor and health gear as opposed to avoidance gear, and it really wasn't a huge difference. So I mean, like, at 9 times out of 10, armor and health are always going to win. So don't worry about dodge or parry. When you get into Ice Crown, get those armor pieces and get those stamina pieces. But so another user, he's just a bunch of numbers, 576811333. I don't know. He goes, what do you think about stamina trinkets versus mitigation trinkets? Now this is another good question. So armor trinkets or stamina trinkets, Caine? What would you go for?
If you have the option, you can get both with Putreside's 10-man, was it unidentifiable organ?
Yep.
But for the most part, it's really dependent on the trinkets you have. I generally use 2 stam trinkets because I have 228 what have you trinkets, stamina trinkets.
Right. So you got the one off of what's her name, Sindragosa? Right?
I do.
Yeah.
If I didn't have her, I would go and use, like if I just had badge gear to grab, I would use the armor trinket from 245.
Right. And yeah, I currently in most of my progression sets use both those trinkets too. They're both 228 staminas. I have done a lot of research and reading on the Putricide one that you mentioned. Our main tank uses it, and I don't know why he likes it. I even asked him, I was like, "Do you like that trinket?" He goes, "I do and I don't." I go, "Yeah, because the armor is nice to have. It's static armor, but as far as the proc goes, like me and Caine already mentioned before, Paladins are the tanks that get hit the least because Holy Shield's always up. Actually, I take that back because Holy Shield, when you do block, it does proc that trinket. But anytime that buff falls off, and mind you, I want to say it's like a 10-second duration, but anytime it falls off due to ad switching or phase changes or something like that, it really diminishes the item level of that trinket because it's got to restack and get your health back up there. So I mean, as far as Paladins, from what I read, it's a lot better just to have just a pure stamina trinket as opposed to that armor and that proc that falls off every once in a while. But is that kind of how you felt about that?
I like it much. I like that specific trinket, unidentifiable organ, when I am main tanking. When
Yes.
you are constantly getting a steady stream of damage, because then there's a
Yes.
good chance that you're not going to lose your stacks,
Yep.
but that's not guaranteed.
Yep.
But as with anything with trinkets, and unlike DPS classes, you need to look, and this, well, you need to look at the fights that you're about to accomplish. You need to look at it in a encounter by encounter basis to determine what trinkets you're going to need. Sometimes armor trinkets are going to outvalue stamina trinkets, and in
Right.
some places, like say, just off the top of my head, if you are the off tank in Blood Queen, armor
Right.
trinkets do you no good at
Right.
all. It's just one of those things to keep in mind.
Yep.
But generally, for a general set, you cannot hurt with stamina trinkets or armor trinkets. I would generally go stamina. However, and on that same note, I know I said mitigation trinkets, um, dodge trinkets. Those would be only used for, like what you said, Sarafang.
Right. Right. Yeah. Avoidance trinkets don't really have too much. They don't really have a place in any of the Ice Crown fights. Like I said, except for Sourfang, maybe only in progression. But after the guild's pretty good and they got him down, you could pretty much just wear whatever gear you want and be all right. That's more of controlling ads rather than healing the marked targets. If you got good healers, you'll be all right. Doesn't really matter what kind of gear you're wearing. But yeah, like you said, for people that don't know, when you off tank on Blood Queen Lanethil, you take 1-for-1 damage and shadow damage that the main tank takes. So you can't avoid any damage and you can't block any damage. It's literally just shadow damage. So armor trinkets have nothing to do there. So what I literally do is I throw in as much stamina as possible. Regardless of the stats that I lose, I just try to get my health as high as possible. And my stamina set's something like 50,000 health unbuffed. So, but that fight alone is if you're off tanking, armor has nothing to do. And like you said, it has to go with Caine made a video about this, guys. It's called tanking awareness. I'm sorry, tactical awareness, and it's one of the first things that you learn as a tank. Gear, the way you itemize your gear per fight falls into the tactical awareness, because you can only you have to be out of combat but to put gear on and take gear off. So deciding how you have to know how the fight works, what you're doing on the fight. If armor's gonna be better than stamina, you have to switch those trinkets out before the fight starts. So I mean, it's just another part of tactical awareness. If you know the fight, you can determine which trinket's gonna be better, your armor or your stamina trinket. So, but like we both said, stamina is probably the way to go unless you get your hands on that one from Putricide 10 or Heroic 10 Putricide. Then it's a little subjective based on the fight. So, but jumping right into the next question here. Tubar, I think I want to say his name is. He asks if paladins are good main tanks in ICC, or would we be better off tanks? What do you think about that, Caine? What do you think for Ice Crown? Do you think we're better off tanks or main tanks?
That is subjective, but off the top of my head, I want to say actually off tanks. There's a
Yeah.
lot of fights, or significant amount of fights, that require ad control,
Yeah.
and we are the predominant ad tank.
Yep. I would go ahead and say we're great in both situations. Art Defender being as overpowered as it is, in my opinion, it's the most it's the most overpowered passive tank cooldown in the game. I mean, it's a free death.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a free death, and Caine has other tanking classes, mind you, so he definitely knows the power, how powerful that cooldown is. So I mean, on bosses, we get a free death every 2 minutes. It literally can save a raid wipe every 2 minutes, or a tank gib, if you will. So I mean, I think we make really good main tanks, and like Caine said, we make very good off tanks because our ad control is very, very strong. So